Hi. For this week's interview, I'm going to be talking to Jessica Chalmers from WeForest, and WeForest is one of the tree planting partners that Tentsile works with and have projects around the world. So let's dive straight in. Hello, Jessica.
Hi, Alex. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thanks for joining me on this second of our series of interviews that we're doing with organisations that do good around the world.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
Thank you very much. All right, so I just wanted to dive in and find out a little bit more for our viewers about WeForest and what WeForest do and how it was started and why.
Well, that's a great place to start. So, back in 2009, some time ago now, a social entrepreneur named Bill Liao and our current CEO, Marie-Noelle Kaiser, co-founded WeForest. And back at the time, there wasn't quite the recognition of forests as a climate solution as there is today. And at that time, the idea was to create a non-profit organisation who would be practical and implementation focused to restore forests around the world. And at that time, everyone was a volunteer. Today, we're a team of over 54 people across the world. Things have grown and the interest has grown massively and the recognition of forests has grown. I think today we realise that to keep the warming targets under the 1.5 degrees C, forests are pretty much the only solution that is cost effective today, and they can reduce and remove about 30% of the carbon dioxide we need to remove. So we're talking a really big solution here.
Yeah, okay, so it's really important not only that I know WeForest plant forests, but it's really important that we keep the forests that we still have, because from my point of view, an old growth forest is worth 50 new growth plantations because of the, obviously it's like biodiverse and all of that, but the carbon sink is so much greater, and it will take those seedlings, 100 years to create a kind of ecosystem that's absorbing that much carbon dioxide. Am I right?
That's completely right. Absolutely. And a lot of what we do is indeed conservation, protection and regeneration. In fact, tree planting is one of the last things that you do. It's very hard to establish new forests. Plants, you don't just plant a tree, you've got to nurture it, weed it, everything. So where you can protect and restore and regenerate naturally, that's always our first option. There is no doubt that there's so much degraded forest we just have to plant, but indeed that is not the first port of call.
That's good to hear and really interesting to know about. So first thing is save the forests we've got, then it is to regenerate the ones that are still surviving but have been degraded, and then as a third battle is to replant for the future.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Great summary.
So how did you get involved with WeForest? How did you hear about it, and how long have you been with them, working with them?
So I joined WeForest over 2 years ago. I've worked in sustainable agriculture supply chains for many, many years in Indonesia, India, all across the world. The scale of that challenge is immense, and I think with a lot of people, perhaps some of the people listening today, when you're faced with such huge challenges, it can often be quite daunting to think, am I really making a difference? And actually with WeForest, I think the beauty of being able to see the difference that you make, to be connected to the work on the ground in such a direct fashion is inspiring. And it means that you can go to sleep at night realizing that you're making a difference. It might be a small one, but we're connected to so many wonderful people and organisations like yourselves and all the groups that you already work with, doing work that together makes you feel like you're making a difference. It's a very positive feeling.
Yeah, no, it is nice to know that you're doing good and you can sleep well at night, and feeling like you're making a difference is really important. And I think a lot of people these days, they don't know how one person can make a difference, or how their family can make a difference, or the small impact that their recycling, for instance, might make. But together, it does add up and it does make a difference. And everybody, if we turned our energy to just making small differences adds up to big change. That's great. So how long have you been with WeForest?
Yeah, just over 2 years now.
Okay.
Already seen huge change in the level of awareness, interest from individuals as well as from businesses. I don't think I've ever seen such acute interest and action for companies to take responsibility for what they need to do. So there's lots of reasons to be cautious and critical of what companies are doing, but we have to embrace the fact that there is a great degree of positive change happening, and we have to capitalize on that.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear, actually, that you've seen so much change in the 2 years that you've been with WeForest, and that companies are embracing it, and from within starting to change the way that they package, or the way that they their supply chains are managed, or the kind of products and how they're made. All of those things filter out, and I mean, in some ways, it could be that we're already. I know we produce a lot of CO2, but in many parts of the world, we're already living a greener life than we did 100 years ago. When, certainly in this country, of course, all of that manufacturing has gone over to the Far East, so we don't see the smoke billowing out of the factory chimneys. But the first world, as the sort of forerunners of that industrialized revolution, need to show the rest of the world and the developing world how we can all be better together.
Yeah, and what's interesting and what we've experienced is that in the places we restore and protect forests in tropical regions, and actually what we see a lot of times is that what used to be the case 100 years ago to manage and live in harmony with forests has been overtaken by population pressure and pressure on forests. So actually, we kind of need to rewind the clock and remind ourselves how did we live in harmony before, and let's go back to that kind of state. Especially the work that you've been supporting us in Zambia is a very good example of where pressures on forests are really removing what could be within 3 generations the loss of the forests there, but by going back in time to remember how sustainably managed the forests were is part of the answer. So I think there's different solutions in different places. There is no one size fits all. It's all about the local context, the local pressures, the local climate, how you protect, how you restore, how you really deliver value for standing forests is all locally appropriate.
Nice, thank you. That's a really good and clear vision of the work you do and the positive bits of action that are happening. But do you have at the moment a favourite project that that WeForest involved in? Do you have out of all the good that you're doing? Do you have one that's
so hard.
kind of takes
We've got about 15 projects globally at the moment. It's really hard to choose. I think the one that I'm finding deeply inspiring at the moment is in northern Ethiopia. It's our largest project, and it's an area where the desert meets the rain. And so what's actually happening there is it's a region where half of the people live in poverty, and the only way to be able to have an effective restoration program is for healthy forests to support healthy communities. So it's the balance. It's exactly where life depends on forests, like actual life. So that one's inspiring because of the scale of it, because of the incredible commitment and dedication from our staff, from our partners, from the communities we work with there. I love the projects in Brazil that are restoring wildlife corridors for jaguars, very iconic wildlife. It's a hard question, so yeah.
So, I can totally understand. Like, if you're doing good everywhere, then it's really difficult to choose a favourite. And I mean, do you guys, as an organisation, encourage or enable local communities to get involved in your projects, or are you sort of volunteer based and bring Westerners out there, or how does it work on the ground?
That's a really good question. We don't bring Westerners out fundamentally. We truly believe that these projects, any restoration project, has to be locally led, because we have to be able to walk away in a way. This is our approach. So
it's about developing sustainable economies and sustainable, communities. Yeah.
So any forest restoration project has to be holistic. And so, as an example, in Zambia, where the pressures on forests are because in many cases people don't have enough income to survive the year. So of course you have to, if you don't know where you're going to feed your family and you have a tree that you can cut to put dinner on the table, that's what you're going to do. So we have a program of work which is on building alternative income streams through beekeeping, for example, as well as on the forest side, on the restoration technically. So all of those components are part and parcel of having a successful project, and one in which it's owned and led by the very people that live and depend on those forests.
Yeah, really important, because that gives them a route to a future, doesn't it?
That's it.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're struggling, and as you say, they will do whatever they need to do to put food on the table. It's like conversations we've been having with an organisation called Sos Orangutan that work out of Borneo and Southeast Asia, and they are working with local tribes, local communities, in order to create, sustainable ecotourism and conservation out of logging. Like, they've been logging families, basically logging communities. So they're going in there saying, like, logging. We understand why you're logging. It gives you an income now, today, but those trees, once they're gone, your kids are not going to have work. So why, let's work together to create a new economy out of the forest, which could, be taking tourists for expeditions and rainforest, encourage that ecotourism market, so that those forests become the draw rather than the wood being the income. Yeah.
I think that's great. I mean, it's certainly a pattern, or it should be with any forest restoration. When people say, we're a tree planting organisation, I always say we're about forests thriving, and that's really and whatever means it takes to ensure that the forests survive for the long term. That's what we focus on, and it sounds. It's great to hear about the Sos Orangutan, and I'm sure that most organisations working in the area that we do a similar thing. It's the only way for long-term survival of forests.
And I mean, I've got a question here, which is, what's next? Yeah, but I think we've kind of covered that in that you're going to be pushing forward as much as you can in as many locations as you can to bring these new sustainable economies to local communities. So I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go on to a question that a lot of our viewers and followers will be asking, which is how they can help, how they can get involved, what they can do, to make a positive impact and to help companies like yours, WeForest, to survive and thrive and grow and do more good.
Oh, what a great question again. So we've got different ways of getting people engaged. I think given where we work in tropical regions and given our focus on local communities, our employment opportunities are really focused at site to give income for local communities. So the biggest impact that people in Europe can have is in several ways. I mean, for WeForest particularly, it's about spreading the word. It's about making yourself known. Social media is becoming an incredibly powerful tool to be able to elevate organisations like WeForest and many of the others up into the visions and views of other companies who can become our partners and who can make that big impact. And I think on a personal level, individuals, and what can you do? Choosing what goes on your plate wisely. when you think about all the good you do with recycling, the next thing to do is to start thinking about where the food comes from. And that, from a carbon perspective, is really important. You can have a huge impact. And talking to your kids and talking in your family about what you can do. Children are, we're not going to solve everything in our lifetime. We've got to give them the tools, inspire the next generation to be able to take on the mission. And yeah, I think that's what we can do.
So I guess, so just to sum that up a little bit in my way, I guess, teaching our kids about these, and I think actually kids are quite savvy to that, because I remember, I started having an interest in deforestation when I was 6, and I saw the devastation going on in the Brazilian rainforest, and I just couldn't believe that the adults of the world were allowing it to happen. So I think actually children have a really clear view on environmental matters. And it's only as you get older and things get more complicated and you realise how interconnected everything is and how greedy human nature can be, that things get muddied. But actually, for children, it's quite clear. It's stop doing bad to the world, because eventually that's going to catch up with us and we won't have a planet to live on.
Totally, and I think that I'm the same. I remember that from when I was 6, and my kids, who are pretty young now, have already come and given me the lowdown on what's happening and what I should be doing about it. And I think the key is to connect what's happening halfway across the world to what's happening in your house. And so helping them, looking at where food comes from on labels, looking at what's in the ingredients in my bathroom cupboard. You wouldn't believe what's in there, And I think helping them to make informed choices makes you feel like you can do something, as opposed to looking at it from over there.
Yeah, you don't have to go over and join the WeForest tribe over in Brazil, because you can do stuff. You can do
just as much good in your own house with your own purchasing decisions and your own voting decisions. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. All right, I know you're a busy woman. You've got the planet to save, so I'll wrap it up there. But thank you so much for joining us on this blog podcast video, and maybe we can revisit you in 6 months and see how things are going.
Be fantastic. Thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jessica.
Cheers.
All right.